Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Fatih. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak and to do this virtually. A this is the new normal for
You
presentations
know,
these days. Hopefully soon again we will all be in person. Um,
yeah,
but for
indeed,
now, this is a very helpful alternative. So thank you, and thank
indeed.
you all for being here. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Peter Edwards. I am originally from Washington, D.C. My master's degree was in literature from UC Berkeley, and my PhD is in applied linguistics from the University of Nottingham. I also do some work as a specialist with the English language programs with the US State Department. I've been teaching, I have been teaching for quite a number of years um, in Poland, South Korea, Japan, Asia for a long time, also Colombia, a little bit of time in Africa, in Kenya and Rwanda. And right now, I am lecturing at KFUPM, King Fahd University in Saudi Arabia. Okay, let me start by explaining a little bit about what I mean by the title of my presentation, Haiku Presentations. Many of us know the Japanese poetry form of haiku, which is very, very strict, very, very short, and still you want to express a lot in this very short, very strict format of poetry. So I borrowed that word for my style of presentations that I do with both my students and I do it myself. And so the subtitle here is Decisions for Smart Learning and Teaching. And I think many of us know the acronym for SMART that I have here on the side. And that has been used in business, but also in education for setting goals for people. And there's more motivation involved when these goals are set. So that's what we're going to talk about. What I hope is that for a takeaway, when you go back into the classroom, you will be able to put together your own haiku presentation, if that's what you would like to do, and also do it as a task for your students. That's what I'm hoping. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to present a haiku presentation, actually two of them. And so you can see a little bit about what I mean, and hopefully we'll have some time for any questions that you have. So I will begin my haiku presentation, and then we'll talk a little bit about what that means and how it can be used. Here we go. All right. Employers around the world have been talking a lot about what they need from new employees. And the four C's often comes up: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. These are things besides the actual content of courses that students take that are really important to employers. However, I find, many of us find some problems with achieving these things. And I've broken this down into four parts: the paradox of choice, attention span, rehearsal, practice, and teamwork among the students. So these are things that get in the way of achieving the four C's. They're problems right now that might get in the way of student success in the future. So this is really important. Now, the picture of the goldfish looks a little bit like my students when I give them their homework, but that's about having that short attention span. And the little joke about Carnegie Hall is, how do you get there? Practice, practice, practice. Now, the United Brain, the UB, I use that when I'm talking about teamwork, how to get the students to all be working together. And I find that very specific and similar tasks helps everyone rowing in the same direction. Now, NASA is always known as being a good team. And if you've seen the movie Apollo 13, you might remember this scene where NASA down on the ground has to try to help everyone by putting these things together. let's watch a little bit of what I mean by this haiku presentation. Specifically, 7 slides, PowerPoint slides I'm talking about, with different timings, 60 seconds for some of them, 30 and 15 seconds for some of them, all into a 4-minute presentation. And you can see the colors on the right-hand side. That is what we have to do to try to order everything. On the left-hand side are all of those times. And we have to think how much time for each slide. Go back and forth, trying to decide how much time for each slide. This takes a lot of really hard critical thinking. I'll show you this next slide, and this is one of my students speaking and making all of those decisions.
Making decisions is like watching a movie, or I would say writing a story. I make billions of decisions every day based on what I have experienced before. It's about whether I feel right or I feel wrong.
So that's my student doing that organization of his PowerPoint presentation. It took him about 25 minutes. That was a quick time lapse in 23 seconds. And this can also be used when we are teaching, especially when we're teaching online. I like these little micro lessons. I sometimes put them up on my YouTube channel. Instead of making a long lesson, I like these little chunks. And then I can say something to my students like, you know, you need to look at this chunk and you actually need to look at these instead of very long presentations that I put up online. Now, that was a 4-minute haiku presentation. 7 slides, all organized, like I said. And then at the end, I do this for my students and for myself. I have a headquarters slide, just like now, and I have taken some of the images from the presentation, and this is when I stop, and after going very, very fast for 4 minutes, I stop and I ask my audience, my class or whoever, if they have any questions based on all of these things that I said in this very, very condensed form. So I can do that right now. Before we move on to the second haiku presentation, are there any questions from anybody? Do you remember these different images? Is there anything? Please, you can unmic yourself or however you'd like to ask the question, or Fatih can field a question. While we're waiting, let's see if we have any questions. Just to remind everyone, SMART goals. That means specific. Actually, we can click this and specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And sometimes you'll see these with slightly different names. Sometimes it's time-based. But I find these to be very nice guidelines when I'm thinking of tasks or whatever's going on in the classroom for my students. I very often find when I do teacher training that many teachers don't have very measurable tasks for their students. I don't mean just grades, but something that can be very tightly measured. And I like that in this crazy style of presentation because you can really see how accurately a student is doing a specific task. This timing of the minutes and the order of the content, it really makes the students think about, well, how important is this? Is this worth 15 seconds? Or should I make this a 30-second slide? I find that that actually helps the students because it involves them with teamwork because they're all working towards these same very, very specific goals. And I find that that is a nice way for them to work together because they can then talk to each other and say, well, I like that, but I think I might have used a 30-second slide for that. Or maybe you should have stretched that out. They all are doing the same thing, that rowing in the same direction. Now I'm going to leave more time at the end for more questions. So if we don't have any right now, we can move on to the next haiku presentation, which will take us another 4 minutes. And then that will leave us some time for any discussion that we might have. So part two, my second haiku presentation. This one was going to, I call it decisions. I have two more students and they will, these are former students, they will talk a little bit about some real world applications and also some, one student will show just 3 slides from his 7-slide presentation. So well, before I move on, if you look over there on the right-hand side of my screen, I like this image. It was made by a friend of mine whose name is actually connected with the Da Vinci Code. If you know the Da Vinci Code, my friend's name is John Langdon, and he does these, what he calls ambigrams. So this word says both teach and learn together. And actually, Dan Brown liked his work and used his name in the Da Vinci Code. But anyway, let's move on to my 4-minute second haiku presentation. Here we go. This is my old student.
Writing, presenting, and even life decisions can be very difficult. This year, I decided to leave a good job that was safe, and so many people thought that I should keep it. But I left, I was unemployed, I was so scared. Then, I found a wonderful new job opportunity. I remember sometimes you have to kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings is a famous phrase. It's been attributed to different people. Some people say William Faulkner said it first, but the idea of going through this process of selecting things, making these decisions, that's a really important thing for our students to learn. And we do that in these haiku presentations.
Some might argue that 4 minutes is only enough to fit a few points in a presentation, but that isn't true, because abbreviating your presentations helps your audience to focus on what you're trying to tell them, and avoids unnecessary blue sky sentences. By limiting your time to 4 minutes, you are telling them more. And remember, sometimes saying less is more.
Another one of my students, he talked about how it's sometimes difficult to do, but it helped him to be much more concise. And that second student of mine, we're going to watch now 3 of his slides. It'll just take about 1.5 minutes. And he has a 15-second, a 60, and then another 15
In computer science, artificial intelligence, sometimes called machine intelligence, is often used to describe machines that mimic mental functions that humans associate with the human mind, such as learning and problem solving. Some examples of AI has been present for some time now, with large variation in application of course, like smart cars that identify obstacles and drive themselves in the streets, or algorithmic advertising analytics, which show the customer what they want to see, or even as simple as an email spam filter, which filters that Nigerian prince on need for help. Of course, AI is still evolving, and new products show all the time. Some live examples of AI in Saudi Arabia are a project that Saudi Telecom Company, or SCC, was working on, is self-driving buses, or Sophia, the first robot to have a citizenship in Saudi Arabia. Of course, those are some of many examples of AI, which are working to improve our daily lives, or even help us through hard times like the pandemic of COVID-19. AI might seem all positive with its utilization surpassing our expectations. But as Stephen Hawking once said, AI is likely to be either the best or the worst thing to happen to humanity.
Yeah, so that was good use of the short 15-second slides. Now for some non-artificial intelligence. We can see what I hope that some of you might want to try is instead of a full 7-slide presentation, you might try something that's just 3 slides with 15, 30, and 60 seconds. And if you see when things mix up like that, if you have 3 slides and you can organize them any way that you'd like, which will be 6 different ways, and 6 different ways to organize the times, there are 36 different permutations. And that gives the students a good bit of creativity in which ones to choose, but still within something that's rather finite. And this can be done with PowerPoint, but it could also be done just with pencil and paper. It could be done even with no technology at all, just a watch to time each other. And it just brings students together to try to get everything condensed, but then also nicely organized in their minds. One of the things, you remember, I spoke about practice, practice, practice. I think that we all find that when we give presentations to students, very often what they present in front of the class is actually the first time they've ever done their whole presentation. Because it was just a few minutes before class that they actually finished their PowerPoint. And now they're doing it for the first time. The thing about having the timed slides, and it's a one click. You're not allowed to touch your computer. You have to just click the first slide and then go all the way through. This forces the students to actually practice. And that I see just really improves the quality of their presentation. It also catches those students who happen to have very good language ability. And so they're able to just kind of come in and they haven't really practiced and they can give a presentation that seems better than a lot of their classmates. And it's just because their English is better, but they actually didn't put a lot of work into it. One thing that I find is that with this kind of very, very strict format, even the students with lower language ability, it becomes very, very evident that they have practiced more and they've really prepared for this. And they very often outshine even the students with better language ability that didn't put the effort into the work. So I find that that is a good measuring stick to really see, this is a student who has really put the effort into doing a good job. Also, the 4 minutes, 4 minutes, that seems so short. That is true, but if you look at the research in recent years, generally the average for a YouTube video, although the average is somewhere around 8 or 9 minutes for the length of a YouTube video, even those, most people that watch them, they cut off before halfway through. It is a simple fact of these current times that attention spans are very, very short. And so I feel it's important to try to train our students into condensing what they have to say into a very short amount of time. And I also find that that's helpful as an instructor. As I said, you put these up on YouTube or whatever platform, and the students will watch something if it's just 4 minutes long. When it starts getting much longer, people start getting bored. Also, when I am doing presentations in the classroom, we can get so many more presentations within one class period. And I find that is very beneficial in many, many ways. It just speeds up the semester and class periods, but also I like to get peer feedback from the students about another student's presentation. And so they're actually more engaged. They're actually watching and they actually give better feedback. The longer presentations, people tend to start playing on their phones, looking out the window, or just not paying attention. So this was quite condensed. We all know time constraints, and this was quite condensed. However, I would love to hear back from any of you, any questions, any comments. Please ask now, and we still have a few minutes. I'd love to explain more if we have questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. If people have questions through the chat box, or they can unmute their mic and raise any questions they'd like to put through to Peter.
Yes, please. While we're waiting, I'll explain a little bit of why I have a picture of Albert Einstein in the corner here. At one point in Einstein's life, one of his friends asked him about his own thought process. He said, Albert, how do you think? How are you able to come up with these amazing ideas? And Einstein replied that it is a process of something that he called combinatory play. He said he looked at a situation, whatever it might be, he tried to take essential elements from that and then to play with them and put them into a different order. And Einstein was actually an inspiration for me and this idea of the haiku presentation, because I like the idea of taking these ideas, these concepts that a student is trying to express, and how to reorganize them, how to combine them. Actually, it's not the word combine, it's actually to permute, to put them into a specific order. But I liked that, and I agree very much with Einstein in that this is where great creativity comes from. It comes from finding new combinations of things that already exist.
Interesting. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? We've got 17 people in attendance.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahdi.
Can I ask you, how do you show the students how to set up a timed PowerPoint if you're doing it online?
Yes, I have a very simple template that I created. It's easy enough to find out online, but anyone that's interested, you could simply send me a message and I could send it to you. I give it to the students is my easy answer, because I don't want them wasting too much time trying to figure it out. So I just give them the template, and then all they have to do is stick their content into that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was excellent, Peter.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for supporting the event.
Oh, of course. Thanks. Thank you for the invitation. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact me at one of these two email addresses. The top one is for my university, King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals. And then the second one is my private email my wife and I have, and all other inquiries that are not specific about KFUPM or Saudi Arabia can go to the second email down at the bottom.
Awesome.
Thank you all very much for this time. Thank you,
You're
Fatih,
most welcome.
very
I'll,
much.
I'll stop the recording now.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I would like to invite